you, Charles. Vanessa, let's finish off with you then, and more on the Trump and Netanyahu meeting. Don't worry about the time; just take your time and do it.
Yes, so interesting that the Economist has actually just very recently published an article talking about Turkey and Israel are becoming deadly rivals in Syria. Of course, we've been talking about that at UK Column for some time now, a few months. Now, how the Economist frames it is very much that Israel fears that Hamas will end up in Syria and under the umbrella of Turkey. Turkey fears the relationship between Israel and the Kurdish factions in the northeast of Syria. But both of them are united over the common ground of keeping Iran and Iranian influence out of the region. Now, Netanyahu has been lobbying the US, in particular Marco Rubio, who's known to be one of the most ardent pro-Zionists in the administration, although the entire administration, I would argue, is pro-Israel, pro-Zionist. So he's been regularly calling Rubio to tell him to cancel the sales of F-35s to Turkey. And I just want to roll this section of the press conference between Netanyahu and Trump, where Trump covers the Turkey issue. So let's have a look at this.
And I told the Prime Minister, I said, just, Bibi, if you have a problem with Turkey, I really think I'm going to be able to work it out. You know, I have a very, very good relationship with Turkey and with their leader, and I think we'll be able to work it out. So I hope that's not going to be a problem. I don't think it will be a problem. Now, with that being said, I believe it was Turkey, and I said that to him. I said it. I said, congratulations. You've done what nobody's been able to do in 2,000 years. You've taken over Syria with different names, but same thing. I said, you've taken it over. He's taken it over through surrogates. He goes, no, it was not me. I said, it was you. But that's okay. You don't have to say, well, sort of maybe it was me. Okay. But what he did, he's a tough guy and he's very smart. And he did something that nobody was able to do. You know, you got to hand it to him. Any problem that you have with Turkey, I think I can solve.
Now, what's interesting here is that Trump is actually laying the blame for the international coup that finally toppled the Syrian government after 14 years of regime change, which was backed by the US, the UK, the EU, the Gulf states, Israel, and suddenly it all becomes Turkey's problem. That's one aspect of this. The other thing, of course, is that Trump is pushing for deconfliction. In other words, I think what he's pushing for, because his attitude towards Israel, in my opinion, would be favorable to that of his attitude towards Turkey, even though Turkey is a NATO member state. And what's interesting is the slight change in rhetoric from Turkey, not since the meeting, but just leading up to that meeting. And of course, we can assume that there were back-channel conversations going on with Turkey. So let's have a look at what Mr. Fidan, the Turkish foreign minister, has said. So he's basically saying the bottom section.
Unfortunately, Israel is taking one by one out of all these capabilities that the new state can use against ISIS and other terrorist threats.
Yeah, so basically, of course, what they're referring to is Israel's bombing of the T4 airport in Palmyra and also Hama to the south of Idlib. So they're basically making the claim that they're only installing air defense and military capabilities for Giuliani's government in Damascus in order to combat ISIS. Well, I mean, where have we heard that one before? And he says it again here, basically. Sorry, Mike, if you can just read that for me again, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, it says, so basically what Israel is doing in Syria is not only threatening the security of Syria, but also paving the way for future instability of the region. I don't think that it's good for Israel's future in the region.
Yeah, so again, we have here Turkey using the combating ISIS card, which again was used for years by the West, while of course ISIS is a proxy of the West inside Syria. So now Turkey and Israel mull a deconfliction line in Syria. So again, this is post the Trump press conference. So Trump is clearly, in my opinion, putting pressure on Turkey to back down and basically retreat behind an agreed line, which doesn't appear to yet have been finalized. But I just wanted to show here why this area in particular is so important. So I've put in a circle there, basically the area that Israel has been intensively bombing, that Turkey was planning to move forward with air defense and military capability in order to allegedly combat ISIS. But look how close that entire circle of military air bases is to the potential of Israel's expansion up that eastern corridor. So the last thing that Israel wants is a Turkish expansionism into that central Syrian area. And of course, again, just to remind everybody, Israel is looking to partition Syria. Turkey is looking to maintain a so-called unified Syria under Turkish control. And one interesting point that I just wanted to make, this actually came out in Newsweek, and it's talking about Syria's new resistance. There are a number of resistance factions forming in Syria since the international coup in December last year. But this is a fairly interesting and in-depth article on the formation of what is known as Wali al-Bas, which is effectively claiming to represent a segment of the population in southern Syria to combat Israeli expansionism in the south of Syria, which of course has been ongoing since December the 8th. So again, interesting regional developments, but the potential for conflict to some degree between Turkey and Israel is definitely still there, with the US, Trump showing that he wants to act as arbiter in that potential confrontation.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Well, we've got to leave it there for today. I'm going to say thank you very much to Vanessa, Charles, and Sandy for joining me today. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back in a few minutes for UK Column News Extra if you're a UK Column member. I won't be back for 2 weeks. I'm off on holiday, so I hope everyone has fun while I'm away. But join us for Extra in a couple of minutes if you're a member. And we'll see you on, or at least Patrick and Charles will see you on Friday as usual. See you then. Bye-bye.